Overthinkers of Reddit, what unlikely scenario actually came true that you were completely prepared for because you are an overthinker? When my wife and I were getting married and looking for a place for ceremony, we have found this beautiful but quite remote garden. We were signing the contract for the event, and I kept thinking that it was quite remote, so I asked, "How much time does it take for the ambulance to get here?" I became the laughingstock of both families. My then future mother-in-law, who was present at the meeting, literally fell down from the chair laughing. The wedding organizer remembered it for weeks, telling about it everyone we met. My dad ended every sentence with, "But maybe you need an ambulance for that." My wife was making siren noises when I was saying something we disagreed on. Every family dinner, all the aunts and uncles were checking if the ambulance was present. You name it, the entire package. Still, I couldn't get rid of this weird feeling. It would have taken over an hour for the ambulance to get to the garden. After a few weeks, I ended up paying a private ambulance to be present at the wedding. Fast forward to the ceremony. As my wife literally walks down the aisle, at the back of the garden I see two paramedics running with a stretcher, and my dad squeezing my hand whispering, "That's not of your goddamn business, let them to take care of it." What happened was that one of our older guests got a heart attack and almost died at ceremony. Was saved by the private ambulance. Ever since then, when my wife tells me that I'm overthinking, I just do the siren noise. I was once driving on the highway behind a car with a couple of kayaks strapped to the roof. My anxious brain kept saying, "What if they fall off the car, Final Destination style?" I tried to convince myself that it was an irrational fear, but the anxiety got the better of me and I decided to change lanes and make some distance. About 30 seconds later, cue kayaks. They both slip off the roof and go rolling around the highway. Luckily, no one was hurt. I definitely do the Final Destination worries thing too. Usually a big truck piled with giant logs or something. You wonder if some part of you unconsciously registered that the kayaks had been shifting some way. I've read that your body can pick up subtle signs of impending doom in various ways that can make you afraid even if you're not sure why. Injuring my dominant hand. As a kid, I had an irrational fear of having it chopped off. I spent all of grade 6 teaching myself to write and do things with my left hand. I made a conscious effort to remain as ambidextrous as possible. As an adult, I broke a few fingers on my dominant hand, but it wasn't a big issue because I could do most things equally with my left hand. Have the exact same fear and have been working on training my left hand occasionally. I'm also trying to learn to echolocate in case I go blind. In college, on occasion, upperclassmen would randomly steal the underclassmen towels from the shower stalls and then lock their room doors, so they had to go to the RA bar asked. I had the idea to stash a towel in the drop ceiling tiles for just that event. Maybe a week later I became the victim of a towel snatching. However, the upperclassmen were very unhappy to see me strut out with a nice clean towel from my ceiling stash. Something similar happened to me at my sorority house. But I just showered for a really long time till they got tired of waiting. I sang and sang and sang. They were my friends and they knew I didn't mind being naked. I always carried an extra juice box and snacks and an extra set of clothes during high school because I was always worried that one of the kids in my school with diabetes might get low and need some sugar for the juice box and snacks, and I might get dirty or my clothes would get ruined, the extra clothes. Well, one day the kid in my class with diabetes did need the sugar. As luck would have it, a few days later a girl in my class was having a really bad wardrobe malfunction and couldn't wait for a new shirt, so my XXL t-shirt acted as both a shirt and dress for her. I carry scissors in my glove compartment. They came in handy when a kid tightened a skinny zip tie around my 9-year-old's finger at a park. Completely cut off the circulation. Also, the other kid's mom was a nurse, so that was helpful too. Carry scissors and a nurse at all times. Ah crap, I forgot to pack my nurse. They fit better in the trunk than they do the dash. I carry some of just about everything in my purse. We were at a beach during off-season and a kid wiped out. I had everything needed to clean and bandage him up. I carried that stuff, renewing when it got old, for almost 20 years before actually needing it. I have a similar experience. I have just about everything you could possibly need to survive in the car if it breaks down or something else happens. I was driving and an old couple was crossing a driveway headed home after a nice lunch out. The lady biffed it on the curb. She had ripped quite a bit of her skin and was bleeding all over the place. I saw them, pulled my car over and was able to hop out, clean her up, and bandage everything up. It felt really good to be prepared and help the frantic old couple. So maybe not quite this, but my little sister. Through a long series of events, my parents, who are not foster parents and not looking to adopt, ended up taking care of an infant, who was not at all related to us, whose mother had just died. It was only supposed to be for a few weeks until she could be moved to a more permanent placement. As soon as I found out that my parents had agreed to help watch her temporarily, I knew where this was going, and I had all the initial adoption application paperwork printed out before she ever got to our house. Needless to say, my parents were pretty surprised the day they said they were thinking of adopting her, and I handed them a folder of forms and my handwritten notes on how the process worked. For the record, she has legally been my little sister for 7 years now. As a parent, I am sure your parents were touched not only by your preparation but by the way the gesture indicated total acceptance and support for your sister becoming your sister. Went through a stage as a teenager where I thought I was psychic. I know, stupid. A friend asked me jokingly to make a prediction. I told him to get a flashlight, because tomorrow would be dark. I grabbed one myself when I got home and put it in my purse. No idea why, just did it. The next day the Eastern Seaboard blackouts happened. He still asks for predictions to this day. Well, what's gonna happen tomorrow? Wear your seatbelt. I carry a fire extinguisher in my auto. I witnessed a car accident where the engine caught fire. I quickly put it out before it burned the inside of the car. Everyone survived. I am an amateur clarinetist. I've played in the local orchestra and the like. My son was in the high school band, also played clarinet. Prior to a football game, at the warm-up area, he called me as I was about to head to the game, saying that someone in his section had a problem with their instrument. So did I have a loaner? Now the thing about being a clarinet player is that everyone you know calls you every time they see a cheap plastic clarinet for sale at a garage sale, or the like. So over the years, especially when my son was in junior and senior high, when I saw one of these for $50 or $100 I grabbed it. Didn't happen every day, but at the peak of my collection I had a couple of beater plastic clarinets in addition to the pretty good wooden one my son played. So I grabbed both of these plastic jobs, which actually played okay, and brought them. I pulled the one I thought was the better of the two out of the car and gave it to my son's friend. Meanwhile, he says, "Hey, another person ran into a problem, and I got the second clarinet out of the car." "How many clarinets do you have?" was my son's question. It was a proud moment. I've noticed a trend amongst some musicians to just slowly accumulate instruments. I has a friend with a couple acoustic guitars, a couple electric guitars, a pretty nice bass, a frankly unsettling number of banjos and ukuleles, and by far the largest gong I've ever personally seen. This was at 9 years old. We had driven home and seen the beginning wisps of smoke for the California Cedar Fire in 2003. Naturally, I assumed the worst, and packed up all my clothes and spent about an hour making a travel cage for my guinea pigs. I tied their water bottle to the side so they could drink, packed up their food and their favorite furniture just in case. I then spent the next few hours monitoring the fire on the news and out in the distance from our window, periodically asking my parents if we needed to evacuate. At some point in the night the fire sped up like crazy and was literally on the hillside across the street. I went into my parents' room and said, "The fire is across the street, are you sure we shouldn't evacuate?" At this point we all went crazy grabbing important documents and supplies, and as we were about to lock the doors and drive I realized I forgot my guinea pigs. My parents told me it was too late, and I didn't have time to grab them, but when I cried and explained I had them packed up, I was able to grab them and go. The house ended up okay thanks to a neighbor putting out embers before they took, but we were gone long enough my pigs wouldn't have made it. I am basically blind without my glasses, and I've always taken a backup pair of glasses when I travel. It went untouched for years, taking up valuable space in my luggage. Lo and behold, one trip to Montreal a few years ago I just woke up one morning to find my glasses broken, no idea how it happened. And I finally got a chance to break out my backup pair. My partner tells me I overthink and overbuy groceries because I have an intense fear of not being able to provide for my daughter. When COVID hit and the shops were out of stock of everything, guess who was the one supplying food and toilet paper to said partner? COVID. I worked at a medical uniform and supply store years ago, and they were moving locations. They decided they weren't gonna sell face masks anymore, and were gonna throw boxes of them away. I asked if I could keep them, just in case. They'd been moving with me for about 5 years before I actually used the masks. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.